Hello, everyone, and welcome back to I'll Watch What They're Watching, where we're curious and adamant about cinema. I am Kyrie, and I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Adam.
And we are talking a little bit today about some of Spielberg's films, Stephen Spielberg, because we know he's got Disclosure Day is coming. Disclosure Day will come out the day that this podcast episode comes out. I have tickets to see it that night. When are you seeing it?
The day we're recording, the review embargo lifted, and it's looking to be, nothing out of this world, but very solid for we're talking mid-70s Metacritic, very positive Rotten Tomatoes, so it's looking like it's decent at best. It seems like it's people are enjoying it in a lot of different ways. I will, of course, see it on Friday because my part of the world has not learned that apparently you can release movies on Thursdays. So I'm stuck on Fridays. I think we've talked about this before, but do you remember, I just feel like there was a distinct time when all of a sudden you could go to the movies on Thursday. And I feel like I remember that period of time weirdly.
I definitely remember midnight releases were definitely still a thing when I was at least in junior high, because I have very distinct memories of friends going to see one of the Harry Potters at midnight and, rolling up bleary-eyed to school. So it feels like maybe almost in the last 10-ish years or so, it's kind of shifted where instead of, it releases on Friday at midnight, it just is it releases Thursday evening.
Yeah, the last one I remember for sure seeing at midnight was The Dark Knight Rises.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if there was another one or two that snuck in after that. But anyway, speaking of the theaters, before we get into Spielberg and talking more about him, tell the listeners about the wonderful little movie that you were able to see in theaters this last week.
Yes! So I saw a movie called Another World. I talked about it a little bit last week, where it is an animated film out of Hong Kong. So, everything right there sounds right up my alley. The way I would honestly describe a lot of it is I felt like if Scarlet was good, it would have kind of looked a lot like this, where it was one thing, as I was sitting there watching it, I just kept thinking, and I came home and told Sarah this, I love international cinema because international cinema trusts its audience to be intelligent. It trusts its audience to get it. It doesn't have to spoon feed you things. It doesn't have to make sure you're keeping up. And so the movie starts and already I'm okay, you're in the afterlife. This movie plays off of reincarnation. So you show up, these beings help you erase you kind of release and erase your memories from that life, and then you go through the waterfall and you're reincarnated into your next version. So that's where we are. So I'm already okay, we're in the surreal world, we're in this afterlife. Okay, I'm keeping up so far. And then all of a sudden everything shifts and we're in the world and we're following this princess character. Again, the first segment, there were a lot of parallels between this and Scarlet. So I'm watching. So again, it doesn't tell you why we're here now. We're just here now.
Sure.
And then it does a shifting back and forth. Sometimes we're in the afterlife. Sometimes we're with this character, and then that shifts, and now we're with another character in the world. So it shifts, and there is some sort of linear time frame. We know, we go the princess, when it shifts again, there are villagers who are talking about the legend of this princess. So we're okay, this is now a couple generations later, and the whole premise is that the main character, I think his name's Gudo, if I remember correctly. He's one of the little beings in the afterlife. There's this girl who showed up in the afterlife, and she's trying to find her brother. So he's just sort of bumming along with her, trying to help her, because he was well, if we find her brother, or if we can get her to feel peace, then we can, then she can go into the waterfall and be reincarnated again. So that's one storyline. And then the other storyline is things that are happening in the world. And Gudo seems to appear there as well at times. And so with the princess and then the other characters, everything's happening in the real world. These characters all have what Gudo calls a seed of evil or something like that. And the thing is Gudo is trying to, is like basically if they open up their heart enough, he's able to kind of pluck out the seed of evil.
Okay.
But if not, then they'll turn into a wrath. So like Gudo also has this like warrior guardian guy who's helping him, who's basically like, hey, if these people go bad, I'm gonna take them out, because that's what we got to do. And so it's Gudo constantly being, though, like, give me a chance, let me. And so we kind of see Gudo do this a few times, trying to heal these people, bring them peace, so on and so forth. It's wild. It's just under 2 hours. Really interesting art style, like almost like a colored pencil look in moments, mixed with kind of this like watercolor, almost cell shading type of thing. Really, really like striking, beautiful to look at. Lovely story. Like I will say this is not, because, it's like, I don't know that it has a rating. This would be probably like, if not PG-13 R. Like there is some graphic violence that I was not expecting. Like all of a sudden I was just like, oh jeez. And there is a major plot point that deals with just something that's kind of unsettling, like made my stomach turn a little bit. And it's not something that you can really omit, because it is like the crucial plot point. It is a major crucial plot point, but it is meant to make you feel like a little bit disgusted, and that is the point. So I will say that I saw it coming, and it was still a thing that I was like, oh no, and then it happened, and I was like, I don't like that at all. So yeah, more graphic than I was expecting for sure, but really just a story and a moral message that I really, really loved. Hang on. Yeah, just about kind of self-forgiveness, the ability to be like worthy of salvation, worthy of forgiveness, worthy of, helping other people, and yeah, I just like I texted you after, and I was like, well, it's the first movie in theaters to make me cry this year. So I really, really, really loved it. I would say if you have a fondness for animation, if you have a fondness just for these kind of like surreal, nonlinear stories with a nice message, I think it's definitely, I really, really, like, my two favorite films this year have been Decorado and this, which is interesting because Decorado finishes and you're like, well, cool, life is meaningless. And this one finished and I was like, life is beautiful, holy crap.
Right.
So, but
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I mean, I really, really loved it. Like, I don't know what else to say about it other than like, it really does seem like it has a lot of parallels with Scarlet, which I actually found out is on Netflix. So if anyone wants to see that piece of hot garbage, it's on Netflix right now.
There you go.
Just a lot of the same beats, a lot of the like some story similarities, some message similarities, some of the same, you're in the afterlife, but there's the soul is not at rest, blah blah blah. But this is just a much better version.
That sounds
Like
great.
with Scarlet, it just didn't make sense. This one, it's like it's trusting you to keep up, even though things aren't all making sense right now, but like it will. And that's the kind of thing, is I'm trusting it. It's trusting me to keep up, and I'm trusting it that as long as I continue, this will be explained. And it does. Whereas Scarlet just had like weird cuts where like we're chit-chatting by the fire and it looks like someone's going to say something, and then all of a sudden it cuts and we're walking up a mountain with refugees, and I'm just like, how did we get here? What is happening? This had cuts in, and it was in such a way that you're like, oh, we're somewhere else now. Now we're in a different storyline. Something's happening. I'm trusting that all of this is going to converge. I don't know how yet, so I'm just going to keep watching. If that
Very
makes sense.
interesting. Yeah, no, that sounds really cool.
But did you get to the theaters? I can't remember.
I did, in fact. One of our loyal listeners, actually was a first-time listener, listened to the first 10 minutes of our podcast last week and immediately called me and said, what are you doing? Get out and go see Obsession.
Yes.
So shout out for getting me out and getting me to go see Obsession. And it is such a fun thing to be a part of something like that, is what I'll say. It's it's the fourth week, I want to say, that this movie's been out.
It made something like $5 million or something on like a Wednesday afternoon that I was looking, and I'm like, that's insane.
And so I thought I missed the moment. But in my theater, it was in the largest auditorium and it was genuinely like 3/4 full. So like probably over 100 people. There were so many people there. It was crazy. And so this was a movie that was literally made for estimates are between $750,000 and $1 million. And it's already passed around $230 million at the box office. So I kept looking at my
Insane.
app, looking at just the seating between the different showings of movies. And again, we were in the second biggest theater. The other big theater was Scary Movie, which sure,
Right.
no
Opening
interest
weekend.
at
Yeah.
all in seeing Scary Movie.
Same. Though it is the most successful in the franchise so far. Or has had the biggest opening weekend in the franchise or something like that. Anyway,
Yeah,
carry
fine,
on.
sure, whatever. And, it's not like nothing is out. It's the start of summer. Mandalorian and
Mm-hmm.
Grogu came out just a couple weeks ago. And it was opening night for Masters of the Universe, which was a
Yeah.
$150 million movie. And I was looking at my app and nothing. There was just no one was going to go see those movies. And
Yeah.
Obsession was just this lightning rod of things. It's really interesting. So I asked the person that recommended it to me, who is just graduated high school, and was just kind of talking to him about it and about, well, why did you go see this movie? Like, it seems like, kind of a random thing. Why are you and your friends interested in it? And he said the two things that really got him and his friends interested was that the director is a YouTuber and just the word of mouth. And I just found that really fascinating that it has just caught on so unlike anything we've seen in probably 20 plus years. The last
Mm-hmm.
movie that made this much noise with such a small backing was probably well, I think Blair Witch Project was in like 2000. That made a ton
Yeah.
of money. And ironically, I was just
Paranormal
listening to
Activity is the other one that I'm kind of thinking of.
and My Big Fat Greek Wedding actually was one that was made for very, very little money and made like $350 million or something crazy like that.
It
So
also
so
I was listening
go,
to a podcast and they were like, it's kind of the only comparison they could kind of make. You mentioned Blair Witch, but also like The Sixth Sense, where The Sixth Sense came out and no one really knew anything about this thing, and then word of mouth kind of caused it to blow up. And that's kind of what's happening here is this thing, like you said, I thought we had kind of missed the Obsession Backrooms train. And like I was looking at this weekend showings, there are more showings for Obsession than pretty much anything else. And yeah, every single showing I was looking at was at least half full, which
yeah,
is
I
crazy.
It's unbelievable. It's such a crazy thing going on. Obviously, Backrooms is in that conversation as well. I think it's doing not quite as good, but still in the same ballpark. It was made with a little bit more money. It has A24
Yeah,
backing. So it just has a couple more things where it just happens to be with, and I think it probably helps that people have been seeing Obsession and have loved going to the
right.
movies, and then automatically, immediately, there's Backrooms, and you have that opportunity to go see that as well. We'll see if I get around to Backrooms. I'm not sure that I will, especially with all the other movies that are coming out very, very soon. But yeah, I did see Obsession. I put it very much in the same, like, I'm not the biggest horror person. It's not my favorite genre of movies, but I still have a good time when I go. So I put it in the same category of Weapons and Long Legs, of just those two in recent memory that
Hmm.
I was in full theaters for. And there are just like genuine, shocking moments that we're all together. I'll say so. A good theater experience, no doubt. And it was such a funny theater experience because it was like there was a moment when the theater just like tipped, and it was like it was building up, and then it was like someone laughed really, really loud, and then it just like opened up the flood, and then everyone just kind of was interacting with the movie.
Oh,
Couple
that's
people were
awesome.
annoying about it, but for the most part, it was really fun just like
Yeah.
being that. But it was like, again, a really strange phenomenon where it was like you could like feel it and then it just like spill over, and then we were all just kind of there having that experience together.
Oh,
So
that's so
I
cool.
I don't know that I need to give much of the plot details, just because I think sometimes in horror it is somewhat straightforward and you just kind of go into it knowing
Mm-hmm.
things are going to go awry. And so, yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really happy that this is happening. I hope that it just kind of keeps reigniting people's passions. I'm sure we'll just get a ton of people that are just excited about movies because of this movie and because of this experience
Yeah.
seeing it. And that's absolutely something to be celebrated, regardless of what the movie is, when those elements come into place so nicely like this has.
Yeah, no, I mean, couldn't agree more. That and that's kind of been the fun thing, just seeing on social media people going to the movies because they're like, well, everyone's talking about this obsession thing, everyone's talking about this back rooms thing, and so yeah, it's just like you said, it's fun to see that happening. It's exciting to see. It's exciting to see the theater, being busy. I This past weekend when I went and saw Another World, I don't usually go on Friday night. I usually like to go to the movies, like, during the week after work. Occasionally, I'll see, like, a Saturday or Sunday. Went Friday night to go see this one because it started at 7:20 or something, and I was like, "This is why I don't come here on Fridays." Like, parking lot was packed. I was running a little bit late, and I didn't wanna show up late to this thing, so I'm, like, running down because I had to park a football field away from the theater, and I'm booking it up to the theater because I'm like, I gotta go to the bathroom and I gotta get all settled in. I don't want to start this movie late. And yeah, it was but that was cool to see. Like, as much as I was like, gosh dang it, all my
Right.
normal parking spots are taken, it was still just like, oh, this place is packed.
Yeah.
This is really cool.
Yeah. No, I agree
Like, even
100%.
even this weird little animated Hong Kong movie, theater was half full, maybe 2/3 full. It was kind of like Ne Zha 2 though, where I rolled in and I was the only person not of Asian descent in the
Sure,
theater.
sure. Well, while we're talking about it, let me just look right now and just do a quick check. Oh, it doesn't look like many pre-sale. Well, yeah, nothing yet. I'll keep an eye out as we get closer, just to
For
see how
Disclosure Day?
different things. Yeah, I'm curious to see if what kind of reaction that's gonna be. So obviously, I'll be there Friday. I'll kind of keep an eye out to see if there's other people going to Obsession or trying other things.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting. I have two theaters around me. One's a little bit newer, and Disclosure Day is only playing at the older one.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, like, Mandalorian and Grogu will play at both, or Mario will play at both. So, kind of surprised they're only playing it once. I guess, I don't
We'll
know. That
see.
might not bode super well. But anyways, we got to get into Steven Spielberg because
Yes.
and I think maybe we can take some time. We're going to do top three. And I thought
Mhm,
we
mhm.
both watched a couple before,
Yeah.
but maybe we could talk a little bit about the ones that we're not going to talk about in our top three, just as a general sort of overview of Steven Spielberg. And he's done so many movies. I've seen so many of his movies. I was a little surprised at how many I'd seen, but maybe we
Yeah,
can just
I
share a
was
couple thoughts on just generally what we've been watching and what we think of him as a
Yeah, I
director.
was actually gonna ask, just, like, what is kind of your history with Spielberg? Because I feel like he was very kind of present when we were young. Well, you're younger than I am, but yeah, just kind of what is your I don't know, he seemed very popular in, like, family movie nights for me growing up, and so I remember when I got to a big enough age connecting the dots, like, "Oh, he did this movie and this movie and this movie." Like, I'm curious kind of what your history and experience has been with Spielberg.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when those dots connected for me. I know it was always kind of like a weird, confusing thing to know that George Lucas was involved with like Indiana
Mm,
Jones. And so, like, you would see him in the credits or like in the opening. But then knowing it was Steven Spielberg and be like, oh, that's the Jurassic Park guy and E.T. So, similarly, those were movies that we watched fairly often growing up. But I don't know when I made that connection. Um, and it's an interesting one where it's like if those movies are like you see his name come up, Steven Spielberg, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense, whatever. Then I just
mhm.
feel like every once in a while you're watching a movie and you're like, this is a Steven Spielberg movie? Like what?
Right.
You know, like Hook or Catch Me
Yeah.
If You Can or even like Minority Report. That those
Yeah.
ones I'm just like, I didn't realize these were Steven Spielberg movies, but okay, like, yeah, I guess I guess that follows with his career progression and everything, but just surprises me sometimes.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I haven't seen nearly as much, or I'm not nearly as familiar with some of his newer things. Like you texted me, I haven't seen The Fablemans. I did see West Side Story. I wanted to get to War of the Worlds in Lincoln. I just didn't have time. I saw The Post because of school. I saw Bridge of Spies. But there's, some of his other ones, War Horse, Munich. BFG, Tintin. I just didn't really get around to them. I didn't have enough interest.
Hmm.
I do have, again, lots of fondness for a lot of them. Do you want to do a top 4 or top 5? Simply because there are so many here that are good. Like, there are so many here that I just have very fond memories of, or that I have just really enjoyed watching and kind of analyzing. So, yeah, it'll be fun to kind of get into these a little bit more. But I do, just because we did both watch it this week, I do feel like we need to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is Hook.
I think a lot of people are very fond of this movie, and a lot of people
Agreed.
have it works for people, I think, in some certain ways. And I get it because I'll start with the good and focus on this good of like there are some scenes in this movie that really, really, really work well from a
Mhm.
stake standpoint, from a emotionality standpoint, from visual, and just like everything comes together so beautifully. So the food fight scene, or the imaginary
Yes.
food scene, is
Bangarang.
just so well done. All of the
Mhm.
children actors, when the magical
Yes.
moment when it suddenly flips, like the colors, the everything about that is so good. And so I understand a lot of that, and I understand why it works well for a lot of people. We talked as we were texting. The
Mhm.
Hooks song is great, and that first
So
introduction
good.
of the pirates is a lot of fun. But I think for me, where my thought about this film in general, where it doesn't come out as far on top as some of the other ones, is that I do feel like things tend to extend a little bit longer than what I maybe am comfortable with, to where I feel like it drags a little bit for me. So I don't think that things being long is an inherent flaw by any means. But in this particular case, as we were mentioning, it takes a good, I think it's about 40 minutes before he gets to Neverland. It's a good, another 20 minutes. So it's like an hour into the movie before you kind of hit like the central plot of what
Yeah.
needs to be accomplished. Obviously, that's not like the plot. The plot is adult Peter Pan understanding that
Mhm.
you can't give away like the childlike wonder of the world, and you can't just be a boring lawyer. Like I get that. I get all that stuff, but I just feel like nothing really pulls me in until that point. And then it's like, okay. And then there's a good stretch in that second act, I will say, where I'm there and like it's good and it makes sense. You have the baseball game, and then he gets hit by the baseball, and I think there I get lost again. And it was funny watching it this weekend because I think that happened to me as a kid too. Like I
Mm.
just the third act of this movie has never really compelled me. I've never really
Mm.
felt bought in. I feel like Rufio's death, sorry spoiler, that's never felt like
Yeah.
satisfying in any sort of way for me. It feels like, why did that happen and what's the purpose? The whole exposition dump again, right? I'm talking about that baseball scene, and that's when it's like all of a sudden this huge exposition dump, and he
Yeah.
sees himself, and then there's the weird stuff with Tinkerbell, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. So
Yeah.
so again, I understand people's liking of this movie. I don't dislike it, but I just feel like first act and third act don't work great for me, but the second act is
I'd
really
agree.
good.
Yeah, I think that I think you basically hit all the right points. It's one that I have a lot of fondness. I have a lot of fond memories of, a lot of fond childhood memories. Watching this, it kind of has Christmas movie vibes, and so maybe that's easier too. Is you put it on Christmas morning while you're doing like 1,000 other things, and so you don't really care that it's like 2.5 hours. And I've been told that, like, watching it as an adult, it doesn't carry the same magic. So I was already worried going into it, and there were still things that I really, really liked. I still think Maggie Smith as, you know, Granny Wendy is perfect. I still think that Robin Williams is fun to watch. I think that Dustin Hoffman is magic as Hook. I think the score is really just, I mean, it's John Williams. He always does fantastic work, but
Right.
like this one, there were moments where I was like, this score is really cooking. So there's some good things to it. Think I think Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell is genuinely terrible. I think that is the worst miscast. I think everything about Tinkerbell doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of weird, I don't know why we have, this is kind of a 90s trope a little bit. Why there's like this weird infidelity stuff thrown in, like
I was gonna say there's this really funny Letterbox review. Did you send it to me, or let me pull it up really quick because it was so
I know
funny.
I sent you one. Well, here we go. Is it the one about how to say goodbye to your mistress so you can go home and be a better dad to your kids?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
that's the one. Hilarious.
Like, it just, because it starts and it's the moment where he gets thrown off the pirate ship and the mermaids come up and kiss him first of all, and I'm like, why is this here? Why are we doing this? And then, yeah, the just some of the weirdness with Tinkerbell, and it just doesn't work. I don't know. Again, I think a lot of the child actors are really good, better than like one of the other Spielberg movies that we'll talk about that has a couple child actors in it. Jurassic Park. The child actors are very bad. But in Hook, I think a lot of it's really, I don't know, there are parts that work, but as a whole it drags on far too long. It has no business being that long. And then there's just some stuff at the end that doesn't quite work, and it just, yeah, I don't know. It didn't click for me. It didn't sing for me. By the end of it, I was just like, when is this movie over, Moses?
Yeah. So it was fun that we were both able to watch that one. Another one I was able to watch that I really wanted to make sure I saw before we recorded this episode was AI, Artificial Intelligence.
Yeah.
So this was actually a movie that Stanley Kubrick was planning to make.
Yes.
It was going to be his next movie after Eyes Wide Shut.
And I believe he and Spielberg were going to make it together. That was the plan.
I don't remember that, but I just know that Kubrick was involved. But essentially, and that makes sense because obviously Kubrick passed, and so Steven Spielberg then made AI. And what's really interesting about this movie is that, slight spoilers here, the first and third act are what many would consider touching on a lot of themes of like Spielberg, of like a kid and, you know, finding meaning and like sentimental stuff. And the second act is like weird sex robot arena fighting, blowing up robots, weird
Excellent.
stuff that's just like, what is going on here? And apparently acts 1 and 3, Spielberg has said, were actually Kubrick's kind of vision, and act 2 was his, which I think a lot of people
Interesting.
like, but it is kind of that opposite thing. This movie didn't work great for me. I know a lot of people do view this one very high. I've actually been seeing a lot of top 10 Spielberg lists throughout social media today, with Disclosure Day coming out, and this one was high on a lot of people's lists. And I think I understand to a certain point, but I feel like I have, again, spoilers. I feel so like the movie takes an approach of really having you empathize with the child AI that is abandoned by his family. That's kind of the first
Right.
act. And then act 2 and 3 is kind of him going on this journey and searching. And like, I get it. And I think that it does pose some interesting questions in certain aspects. But I think it's more interesting perspective from like his family that gave him up, that I think that would have been a more interesting thing to explore than what we had. And then I think the weird, and who is the actor that plays the sex robot? Hold on. Jude Law. His name is Gigolo Joe.
I see that. That is a name. That
So
is a character name.
none of that really works for me. I don't really like the sex robot parts of this movie. Robin Williams is a voice in this. I didn't even, and Meryl Streep, Ben Kingsley. I didn't know any of that. But anyways, I did watch that one and wasn't a favorite, so not in my top
Okay.
list. But one more I'll mention, haven't watched recently, but have watched within the last like 5 years or so for the first time, Minority Report. And I really did like Minority Report. That's a really fun one, good action adventure.
Yeah.
Watched War of the Worlds earlier or sometime last year as well. I think it's fine, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's gonna be fun to kind of get into this. I also know I would say just kind of the big thing that we've both missed. Neither of us have seen Saving Private Ryan. For me, it just came down to like I don't have 3 hours
Hey, I
just to.
watched the first 20 minutes.
Okay,
Don't
that
don't
doesn't
speak for
count.
me. I saw enough.
So that will not be in our list. But yeah, do you wanna go ahead and dive right in?
Yeah, of course. So my number 3 is a tie, and I think
Cheater.
they're in some ways similar-ish. So my number 3 is Lincoln and Schindler's List.
Okay.
So I'll start with Lincoln. This was a movie that my dad took us to when it came out in theaters. And one of the few times I can say definitively that straight up fell asleep in the movie theater. Just
Okay.
bored out of my mind. But in grad school, I read A Team of Rivals, which is a book about Abraham Lincoln. A lot of Lincoln is based on things that happen in that book. And I just grew to really like be inspired and like think of just kind of have that feeling of like, wow, what a great man and what an amazing thing he did. And then watching Lincoln after that context of knowing some of those things, it's obviously a well put together movie. It's obviously an incredibly acted movie. Probably put some things in certain lights. And when anytime you're doing with history and, are you really
Right.
focusing on certain voices and forgetting some that should be there? But I think it is an important story, and I think it's one that something that it's just a good movie. Schindler's List, kind of some similar feelings
Yeah.
to that, but I've only seen Schindler's List one time, and it was
Fair.
this is one of the like few movies that I just have such a distinct memory of watching this movie when I watched this movie. I remember certain scenes, I remember the basic plot of what's going on, but it's been maybe 15 or 16 years since I've seen this and I've only seen it the one time. But I just remember the distinct like gut punch and just the emotions that this movie is able to evoke and make you feel
Yeah.
for such a horrible, appalling thing that you also see the people that essentially risked everything because they recognized something was absolutely corrupt and evil and were trying to do what they could within their power to right that wrong. So yeah, there's some scenes that again are just ingrained in me because it was such an impactful thing for me to watch. It was again, I remember very distinctly watching that and just feeling like such a reverence for I didn't watch rated R movies growing up, so that was another aspect of like this is a rated R movie and we're watching this because it's an important story for you to understand and to know. And I think that was such a like defining moment because it was like I thought rated R was because it was bad. And that's not the case. It's rated R because this is just, like such an atrocity, such a terrible thing that you have to be able to watch something like that and understand why and what's going on. And then you're able to sit with those things. And I think that movies are important in that way to teach us and to help us remember and to help us create a better world. So it's an incredibly well put together movie, well regarded, well defined as one of the, defining American movies ever. And it's my number 3.
All right. Yeah, I saw Schindler's List honestly within probably like the last 5 or 6 years, and yeah, same kind of thing. It is a lot to take in. It's a hard watch. I didn't think that I would ever watch it again. I have said before I'm taking a class called Nazis on Screen, Hollywood War Propaganda, and that's one of the movies we're watching.
There you go.
And I'm a little bit like, "Ugh." Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a great pick. It's not one of my personal favorites simply because the ones on my list are just a little bit more fun, but like I don't think you can deny the just kind of the epic nature and the majesty of not
Yeah.
majesty, but
And
the ability to reimagine and recreate visually, what happened in the Holocaust and to be able to conjure up those emotions.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, so mine, I was able to revisit a lot of ones that I had watched before, but it had been a while. And I'm a little torn on my number 3, and I'm torn because I know both of them are on your list, and so I'm a little bit like, which one do I bring up? I'm gonna bring up, I think, the one that just has more appeal for me personally, even though I think the other is a better film. So when you get to the one that I think is a better film, I'll talk about it a little bit. But the one that I'm bringing to the table because I just think it's a blast is Jurassic Park.
Mm.
I just think it's a lot of fun. I will say I do think some of the thriller aspects were a little ruined for me by me because I was making snarky commentary throughout the film. Yeah, I don't know. I was just in a goofy mood, and so we're watching it, and I see. It's been years since I've seen this thing, and it starts, and I'm like, a dinosaur park? Who greenlit this? This is a terrible idea. And then when things start to go wrong, I'm like, where are the backup security generators? Where is the kill switch? Why are none of, because it's talking about how the guy who ruins everything is like a slob. I'm like, why? If his desk is a mess, why are you allowing him to run security stuff in this dinosaur park? No, fired. I would be like, everyone who works in this park needs to be like best of the best military grade precision.
Right.
And so anyway,
but I think
it's very fun.
The older that I get, I think the more and more you look and you're like, yeah, that checks out. That seems about how that would go.
I don't know. There was just enough about it that I was just like, this seems like a bad idea. Like,
Right.
when you can see that, it is a bad idea. That's the whole point.
Yeah. And so I think that, again, the older I get, the more I'm like, no, yeah, this totally checks out. This could totally happen. That makes sense why something that would happen.
For a movie that came out in 1993, a lot of the visuals, like a lot of the VFX, really, really hold up. There was a couple moments where I was like, yeah, you can kind of see the age of that CGI on it. But there are some other scenes that are just, I mean, the mixing of puppetry with the CGI and the practical effects and everything. A lot of it just holds up really, really well. The child actors, I think, are quite terrible. But I don't know. I think it's a lot. I think the Velociraptors are fun. I think the T-Rex is a great time. There's a lot of really good cinematic moments. A lot of good thriller suspense moments. I think this is a making of a really good. I don't know. People might argue. I think in a lot of ways this is a horror film. I think it's a creature feature. It's a monster movie, and I think that it just hits it all really well. It's fun, it's thrilling, you're invested. I don't think it's too long. I think it's just pretty much right at the length it needs to be. And yeah, I had a really great time with it.
Yeah, this is my number 2, so I'll jump in to share a little bit more with you just in general about how these things go. Agree with you on so many points. I think this is the 2 movies people bring up all the time when they talk about visual effects is this one and Pirates of the Caribbean 2. That those are kind of the 2 best looking movies. And the reason why is because they do such a good marriage of practical and CGI. And this was obviously kind of a huge pioneer in doing a lot of that. And
I would also give a plug for Lord of the Rings there in that.
Yeah, I would say that. And so I think you'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but part of it is just sort of the ability to show some and not all of it. Mm-hmm. And that just plays so well. I understand what you're saying about the kids in this movie, but I think that they act like kids more so than in many other movies. So I understand your complaint, but knowing kids, I'm like, no, that checks out by what they're doing.
All right.
Obviously, the score, and I think you're right. Kind of the elements
the score is great.
The elements you were talking about. I think this is one of those movies that is way more tense and scary than you remember. It's when you watch it, and if you are just watching it, you're like, oh, yeah, this really does ramp up tension and release it in really good ways. I do think too, it's an interesting franchise at this point. Obviously, branching off in a Jurassic World and
Right.
The one that came out last year that I had to watch for the Oscars was just
Right.
pitiful, just horrendous mess. So this is one that people will throw out a bunch. There's that meme from Oppenheimer where it's Cillian Murphy and he's like eyes wide, like basically, what have I done? And people say that's Steven Spielberg with the Jurassic Park franchise. I didn't watch Jurassic Parks 2 and 3, which were both, or at least the second one. I think.
Second one is Spielberg, third is not.
Okay. So I remember the second one, which is Lost World, I believe. I watched it when I was like a senior in high school or something, or maybe like a junior, I don't know, sometime in high school for the first time with my group of friends. And it was pretty fun. I don't know. I didn't think it was horrible, but definitely not in my top ones here. But yeah, Jurassic Park, obviously all-time classic. So
I feel like I do have to just shout out your review of Jurassic World Rebirth because it has made me laugh out loud. And it just says, really puts the ass in Jurassic.
yeah, I was proud of that one. Really, just a really bad movie.
It made me laugh. I saw it and literally laughed out loud earlier this week. It brought me a lot of joy.
That movie is just inexplicably constructed. Like, there's just elements that make no sense. It looks terrible. The dialogue is horrible. Yeah, just a pitiful movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, can't speak for a lot of the others, but yeah, I think you're right. Jurassic Park is just one of those classics. Everyone's seen it. Everyone loved it.
Yeah.
But my second one, my number 2, is the one that started it all, and that is Jaws. And this one I got to rewatch it. I'd only seen it once, and I got to rewatch it in the theaters last year with Sarah. They did a re-release, and we got to go see it in theaters. It was super, super fun. It was fun, too, because at one point she leaned over and she was like, they're making sure you notice some aspect that was on the set. And I was like, I've only seen it once. I don't remember anything. She was like, how the tables have turned.
Actually, how the turns.
Because most of the time it's me being there being like, I know it's going to happen, and me struggling not to reveal spoilers. And in this one, I was basically like, hang on. Yes?
It was the
I know what it was. I want to not give spoilers.
okay.
She was trying to remind me of what specifically it was, and I'm being vague on purpose because, I mean, if you haven't seen Jaws by now.
Yeah, it came out 50 years ago.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I think it's the one that kicked it all off. It was kind of had, some infamy to it. It was basically, filming was supposed to be 50 some odd days, and it was like 155. So they went way over schedule. The budget was $3 million. He spent $9 million.
Jeez.
So like that was the thing, is like, had Jaws not made gangbusters, I think that would have been the end of Spielberg's career.
Wow.
He spent 3 times the budget. He spent 3 times the amount of time allotted. It was the first movie shot in the ocean. The technical shark that they made wasn't working. Like, this is one that podcast, What Went Wrong, like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, because they tested this mechanical shark out, but they didn't test it in salt water. And so that was what basically broke it. They tested it in water and they're like, oh, it works. This is great. And then they tested it in the ocean, and the salt water started mucking it up. So you really only see it at the end. And which, again, that's some of the best parts of it. They used a lot of stock footage of sharks to make it look like, the shark is there. They used the barrels to kind of build the tension where is it? I think it's a blast. Like, it's so tense, so fun. The scene where he's tossing the chum in the water, to this day, when you see the shark come out, I jump every single time. I've seen that scene several times at this point, because that's one of the iconic clips. Every single time, I'm like, there it is. Every single time, it scares the crap out of me. Again, I think it struggles a little bit right at the end when you can tell that the shark is when it jumps onto the boat, and you can tell that that's clearly a fake shark. But I think up until then, I mean, it's great. It's what created the summer blockbuster. It, made $1 bazillion, which is then what put Spielberg on the map, and that's what got him to make all these others that we know and love. But yeah, I mean, it's Jaws. It's iconic. It's amazing. There's so much about it that I feel like you could kind of grapple with and talk about. And yeah, again, it was just kind of this disaster of a project that the editor was basically able to cobble together and make something that just made money. And again, I think the fact that it made what it did is, in my opinion, what saved Spielberg's career.
Yeah. No, it's a great story, great piece of film history, just one of the most iconic things out there. I can appreciate all of that, and I can look at that movie and just understand the history and everything that went out into it, and be amazed by it and impressed and totally understand what's going on there. It's not my favorite. It's not in my top list.
Which is fine.
But I'm not going to refute any of your points because I don't necessarily have specific critiques other than it's just not my favorite. But I'm glad that you're able to share that for our listeners.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well,
down
my
to
number one. Yes, I won't talk about this too much because we already did. And so some of you may have already listened to an episode where I talked about it. But my number one is E.T. I think this is I would put this up as one of the best movies of all time. I think that it is genuinely like creative and interesting. And you have to read the text you sent me because I don't think there's a better way to describe E.T. himself.
I said the movie magic.
Yes.
Let me see. Let me find it. I don't think we text that much. And then when I'm trying to find a text, I'm like, goodness gracious, where is it? I said movie magic is the ability to make E.T. cute and ugly at the same time.
Right.
And you said literally, and I said he's adorable, but he's also an ugly little guy.
Yeah, he's great. You know, when this came out, it was the highest grossing movie of all time up to that point, unadjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those rare, similar to, I'll say I've heard it thrown out a couple times about Disclosure Day that it's a 4-quadrant movie. So we'll see how that works. But I do think it is a rare 4-quadrant movie that has appeals for, boys, girls, adults, children, all ages, anything. There's just something I think about like the time period that just feels magic. There's just like feelings that it captures about like wonder and justice and like choosing to do the right thing against all odds and underdogs and magic. And it looks beautiful, and the music, obviously John Williams is connected in all of these movies, but it just pulls everything together the way that it needs to be. So yeah, this is a 5-star movie for me. Again, I think it's one of the best movies of all time, and I love E.T. I love that little guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with anything. This is the one that I was talking about with Jurassic Park, where I think Jurassic Park I had a little bit more fun. But to be fair, like I haven't seen E.T. in years, remembered pretty much nothing. So I crammed it last night specifically for this episode. I would like to rewatch it when I'm not quite as tired and not trying to cram it in. But I mean, it's still, I still got a little misty-eyed right at the end. The I'll be right there. I was like, it's so good. But I mean, I think you're right. I don't disagree with anything. I think the design of E.T. is really creative. Again, I think it's really fun how they make it, like on paper, you look at him and you're like, ugh, this ugly little...
One other thing
like
I just have to mention, when he's like he loses him and he's like laying in the creek and he's all like dying, he's like cold and shriveled, that terrified me as a kid. Like,
really?
I don't know what, but that scared me so bad. So every time I watch that, I'm like, oh. Just like the feeling, it's like the feeling that evokes is like pure dread in the way that like horror movies will do sometimes. I just feel like that's the feeling I get when I watch that particular sequence. Yeah. And I mean, I think the child actors here are doing some really impressive work. I think Elliot, have you seen the audition tape of Elliot? Yeah, I have. And he's great. So that's if anyone hasn't seen that, you should look that up because he does such a good job. Yeah. and I mentioned this in our last episode we talked about, but I'll mention it again, is that he's still acting today. So he is the dad in A Haunting of Hill House. So he's working and doing things today, which is great.
But yeah, no, I think I would agree. I think it's one of those movies that's kind of like a Back to the Future and like an Empire Strikes Back, where like you could make an argument that this is a perfect movie.
Yeah, I agree.
I think
Obviously.
absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm really glad that you brought that one up because watching it last night, kind of seeing it with fresh eyes was a lot of fun. But my number one, I was devastated to learn that you're not crazy about, but it's fine. It is a movie that I honestly am right up there with. I think this is a perfect film. I think this is the best popcorn movie ever made. And I think that is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes.
I just think it's so much fun, and it maintains that. Like, I saw it as a kid, I've seen it as a teenager, I've seen it as a young adult, and then I saw it like a week and a half ago. And a week and a half ago, I was just like, I'm still just having so much fun. This is so great. The iconic, I hate snakes, the whip, the theme song, everything about the score I think is so much fun. I think Belloc is such a great villain. Harrison Ford plays such a, charming scoundrel rogue type character. I love Marion Ravenwood. Everything about this movie is just so fun to me. It is just this swashbuckling, globetrotting adventure that, I'm sure it's probably inspired. One of my all-time favorite video game franchises is Uncharted. I'm sure that Indiana Jones has inspired a lot of my love for Uncharted. I love the history aspect of it mixed with mythology. I've always found like lore and legend something that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
I think these characters are, I've said before with movies that I tend to struggle with a little bit. I enjoy a movie gets points if there are characters that I enjoy spending time with.
Sure.
And that's the thing is I enjoy spending 2 hours with Indiana Jones. I enjoy spending 2 hours with Marion Ravenwood. I enjoy spending time with these characters and seeing, every time Indy gets himself into a scrape and then manages to scramble his way out of it. Like, it's just everything about it is just, like, fun is the word that comes to mind when I think of Indiana Jones. Like, I just think that to me is everything is fun about like summer blockbusters, about popcorn movies. Like, yeah, you've got a massive Coke in one hand, you got a bucket of greasy, buttery popcorn in the other, and you're sitting and you're going to watch Indiana Jones just, again, getting himself into scrapes and figuring out a way to get out of them. And that is just so much fun for me. I think some of the stunt work is just really impressive. Everything on the Nazi cars in the truck when he's underneath the car. And yeah, there's just so much about it that is iconic. Again, you cannot hear the theme song without recalling to mind Indiana Jones. And I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is by far the best one. I think there's elements of others that are fun, but I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is just the one that, like you said about E.T., I think it hits all the beats I want it to hit. You've got the humor, you've got the action, you've got the romance. I'm a sucker for like action movies too. And so like this movie is a movie that I'm just like, yes, characters I like to spend time with, fun action, I'm laughing, I'm a sucker for romance, I am here for this movie. So that, I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. I don't think I will ever get tired of that film.
No, that's really great. And I'm glad, again, that this was one of your top picks. Similarly to Jaws, it's just I've always liked this movie, but I've never loved it. And it's nothing in particular. It's nothing I can point to, but that's just how I am. I will say it's somewhat of a miracle. I feel like that they were able to pull the movie together.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this movie is so interconnected between, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas's friendship.
Yes.
And it's so funny to hear about George Lucas because he hated directing. He hated so much about making movies but he still like obviously found so much passion and so much doing in it. But there were just so many bad ideas that these two got in their heads when they got together. They almost named him Indiana Smith, which I think just would have never worked.
Nope.
They had some they're like, they both got divorced at a similar time, a couple of years after this movie. And they're just the most like the two most divorced dads you've ever met. And so I just feel like the two of them together, like, again, it just feels like a miracle that we got what we did when there were so many bad things that could have happened in between that. So I'm glad we got where we got to. And maybe Temple of Doom was a correction kind of back to some of their sensibilities that they were trying to get through. But regardless, obviously, most of these movies we've talked about are not only in our lists of top Spielberg movies, but in many, many people's lists of greatest movies of all times, greatest popcorn movies, greatest blockbusters, all these different things. So it's obviously the impact that Steven Spielberg has on movies in general is almost unfathomable to think about. Just one of the greats of all time. And he's still working today, and he's got one coming out this weekend.
Yep. So Disclosure Day will be a lot of fun. I know we're both going to go see it, so we'll definitely be talking about it next week. Let you guys know what we think, if it's worth your time. But Adam, what else are we watching?
Happy Pride Month. We will be talking more Pride Month movies towards the end of this month. So Moonlight and Brokeback Mountain, we're going to get to those ones. But, watch other ones too. Watch anything you can think of about Pride Month. And
there are happy queer films too.
There are happy queer films too, so catch those. I appreciate everyone that listens. Like I mentioned earlier in the episode, obviously we love feedback. So text us, call us, interact with us, and we will always be responsive, and we will always do things that we maybe wouldn't do otherwise when it involves movies and people giving us feedback. So don't be afraid to do that. And until next time.
Catch you later.